Well, everyone, it has been quite a 2021, hasn't it? Hopefully, all of you out there are looking forward to a better 2022. Let's talk about the cars that I really loved driving in 2021, the ones that you should know about, the ones that you should look out for, and the ones that are coming up that I'm excited about in 2022. If I look a little bit tired at the moment, there is probably a reason for that. It looks like we filmed and my intrepid editor edited 220 videos in 2021, and by last count, I drove over 300 new cars, SUVs, and trucks this year. Let's talk about the best of them. First up, the best car for 2021 that I drove this year is perhaps the one that I wasn't expecting to like as much as I did, and I have to say that is the new Ford Maverick. Gotta say, Ford has really been on a roll this year, and the Maverick is unexpectedly inexpensive, also unexpectedly unavailable because it turns out that it's selling so well Ford can't build enough of them. The hybrid system is standard and it's the least expensive hybrid in America. It gives you excellent fuel economy, the practicality of a small truck, the practicality of a small crossover, all smushed into the same body for just over $20,000. Now, the sad part is, even if you were to order a new Maverick right now, you probably would not even get it in calendar year 2022, according to Ford. Now, you might find some hanging out on dealer lots, but expect to pay way over MSRP for that Maverick, because honestly, it is really good. The next one, I have to say, is also a Ford product, and that is the Mustang Mach-E. I ended up getting one for a long-term video here at Alex and Autos. By the time you're watching this video, it's possible that it may have been sold, or it may end up getting sold sometime in January of 2022. Either way, I've been really impressed with the Mach-E. Let's be honest, it's a very good Tesla impersonation. If you like a Tesla Model Y and you think to yourself, I really wish it could charge with a CSS connector, I wish it had an extra screen and instrument cluster exactly where you expect it, and a few extra buttons here and there and a Ford logo on it, that is exactly why you'd want to get the Mach-E. It really rides quite like the Tesla. It actually rides a little bit better if you get the GT version with the adaptive dampers, but the regular model feels very much like a Tesla Model Y out on the road, and the overall shape and profile is definitely very Tesla as well. Range, absolutely excellent, easily over 250 miles for almost every trim of the model. If you get the extended range battery pack, even with all-wheel drive, even with the GT models, etc. And if you treat it right and you get the rear-wheel drive model, you can get over 300 miles of real-world range in that model. Of course, the standard range model is going to be down there closer to 200. Next up, on the EV front, I was also really impressed with the Hyundai Ioniq 5. It is one of the fastest charging EVs in the world, and I think that the Ioniq 5, as far as the way that it drives and the way that it handles out on the road, is a bit more my preference. It is more soft, it is more comfortable, and it's a little bit quieter than the Mustang Mach-E or the Tesla Model Y. So if you want a modern EV with a long range, fast charging, but you don't want something that is firmly sprung and on the sportier side of tuning, then you might want to take a look at the Ioniq 5. I also like the look. It definitely looks like a big Volkswagen Golf. Next up, we have the Toyota Tundra. I have to say, on the downside, I do wish Toyota had been a little bit more aggressive with engine options and perhaps trim levels, but I love what Toyota has done with this truck, and they're really the only other company out there, aside from the big three, that are really pushing hard at the American half-ton truck segment. Toyota decided to pull out all the stops, put in a twin-turbo engine, a 10-speed automatic transmission, and there's going to be a Tundra hybrid, which by the time you're watching this video, I may actually have driven. I will be driving that in early January 2022. Now, it is worth noting that Tundra's hybrid has gone a slightly different direction than people were expecting, because the upcoming Tundra hybrid is not overly focused on fuel efficiency. Instead, it's focused on power. Next up, we have the Acura MDX. I think if you're looking for a three-row luxury crossover that doesn't break the bank and has all the features you expect in it, safety, luxury, comfort, gadgets, etc., the MDX is an absolutely excellent buy. It doesn't have the driving dynamics that we find in some of the German options, but it is going to cost significantly less. It's also likely going to be less expensive to keep around. If you're taking a look at a Lexus RX, I think the MDX does a better job of being a luxury vehicle at this moment, and of course, it has that usable third row in the back. Last up, we have the most expensive vehicle in this group, and one of the most expensive vehicles I drove in 2021. I apologize for this one, but it is the Mercedes-Benz EQS. The EQS just really impressed me. It's incredibly comfortable. It's very unlike some of those other EVs out there in the drive comfort, the interior fitment and finish, etc. is excellent. If you're looking for one of the ultimate EVs in the world, I would say at the moment it's going to be the Porsche Taycan or the Mercedes-Benz EQS for entirely different reasons. The EQS really is the vision of what Mercedes has in store for their next EVs out there. We're going to be seeing an EQE and other models coming up in their new EQ family. You might not be able to afford an EQS, I certainly couldn't, but it does show what Mercedes has planned for the future, for their smaller, less expensive, and of course their SUV EV models coming up at some point soon. Now let's talk about the runners-up, the ones that didn't quite make that top-end cut, but I think were still a solid option that you should take a look at. The first one is the Acura RDX. We don't yet have a Type S version of the RDX. I wouldn't be surprised if it came soon, but as it is, the RDX is an excellent small luxury crossover. I have to say that Acura has done a really good job with their crossovers lately. I'm not quite as thrilled with Acura's current sedan lineup like the TLX, but the RDX and the MDX are absolutely excellent. Next up, we have a selection of Fords. The Bronco and the Bronco Sport were both very, very impressive. If you're looking for a Wrangler that drives more comfortably and is almost as off-road capable from the factory, but certainly a lot of off-road mods can happen to the vehicle, that is going to be the Bronco. The Bronco doesn't have a full, solid front axle. It has an independent front suspension, which makes it more appropriate for daily commuting, but there are already conversion kits to solve that particular problem if it's a problem for you and you want even more capability in your Bronco. The next one for most people out there, I would say, actually is the Bronco Sport. The Bronco Sport is an excellent subcompact crossover. It looks great. I think it looks better than the Escape. It's a little bit less expensive than the Escape, and it's really roomy on the inside. As far as packaging goes, Ford has done a great job pricing the vehicle, packaging it from a physical standpoint and from a pricing and feature standpoint as well. Bronco Sport is absolutely excellent. If you're a fan of small square crossovers, the Bronco Sport should certainly be on your shopping list. The F-150 Hybrid should also be on your shopping list if you're looking for a half-ton truck. What Ford chose to do with the F-150 was not directly target fuel economy, although there is a modest bump. Instead, they've targeted people that are interested in basically carrying a generator around with them. And that really is the interesting innovation with the F-150 Hybrid. You can get a power output that exceeds a lot of small diesel generators or really big, heavy Honda gasoline generators. 7,000 watts continuous basically out of the truck. So if you're the kind of person that wants to go to a campsite with a trailer, whether we're talking a small teardrop trailer or an Airstream or a big fifth wheel, and you don't want to run either an external generator or an internal generator that are going to be an awful lot louder than just running the engine in the F-150, this is the kind of vehicle for you. I have really been impressed by the power output ability and just the way that Ford has designed this particular system. The engine doesn't even have to run all the time. It starts and stops. It's very fuel efficient. It's actually more fuel efficient than other generators that I tested it with, and it is going to be a lot quieter. So if you simply want your air conditioning and your refrigerator to run all night long in your camper or your RV, this is going to be an excellent way to do that. Next up, we have the Jeep Grand Cherokee. Jeep didn't break too much new ground with the Grand Cherokee. It looks a lot like the old one, but they have refined everything that people have loved about the Grand Cherokee, and for me, that is absolutely okay. There's also a 3-row version if you're interested in that, and coming up soon, plug-in hybrids as well. I'm more interested in the plug-in hybrid to see exactly how that setup works. Also, we have the Jeep Wagoneer and Grand Wagoneer if you want the ultimate in Jeep excess. These are really targeted at the Lincoln Navigator and the Cadillac Escalade. Although there is a less expensive version of the Wagoneer available, the vast majority of the Wagoneers are definitely going to be on the expensive side of things, and they can get well up over $100,000. Although not confirmed, all the rumors seem to point to a Dodge version of the Wagoneer happening at some point, and that's likely going to be the one that's going to be less expensive and compete more directly with the Ford and the Chevy full-size SUVs. Next up, we have the Hyundai Santa Fe, which I think is a very well-rounded vehicle. It's not flashy at all, but it does everything very, very well, and it's priced right. If you're looking at something like a RAV4 or a CR-V in top trims and you want a little bit more room, you could get into a Santa Fe with very similar feature content, perhaps a little bit less power depending on the version you're looking at, but there are also other engines available in that model. There's a more powerful turbo, there's also a plug-in hybrid, etc. Next up, I want to say that the RAV4 should also be on this runner-up list, even though I technically did not drive the hybrid or the plug-in hybrid in 2021. The RAV4 is just excellent. If you can get your hands on the plug-in hybrid, that is an excellent small crossover hybrid as well. Last but not least, we have the Mercedes-Benz GLB. It's adorable, it seats 7. If you're looking for a small luxury crossover with an emergency third row, that should definitely be on your shopping list. Now let's talk about what's coming up in 2022 that you should keep in mind if you're waiting for a new vehicle. We're going to have a refreshed Chevy Silverado. That is one of the most exciting products, for me at least, out of the Chevy brand. The interior has been completely redesigned and it looks really, really good. I cannot wait to see that in person. The interior has been my major complaint about GMC GMC and Chevy trucks in the past, and both of them are going to be getting all new interiors. And they look, at least by the photos, that they're going to leapfrog Ford and perhaps even Ram in terms of interior design and refinement. So if you're looking for a half-ton truck and you want a really nice interior, definitely keep that on your shopping list. You might want to wait for it. Also, obviously, the Ford F-150 Lightning is very exciting. Ford has received so many pre-orders that production is essentially completely booked for 2022. If you haven't already pre-ordered one, you probably won't be getting one. But the Lightning promises over 300 miles of range with the bigger battery pack, which is pretty similar to what we're seeing in the Rivian lineup, with pricing that is not too crazy. It's definitely going to be a little bit less than Rivian, pretty expensive for a truck, but still less than some of the other options. Then, of course, we have the new Rivian lineup. I have briefly driven an R1T, but I haven't been able to drive one for a full review, so that is supposed to be coming up soon. Obviously, the Acura Integra and the Lucid Air are on this list as well. Alfa Romeo should have a new Tonale, if I'm pronouncing that correct. That's going to be their new subcompact luxury crossover, sort of designed to compete with the BMW X1 and X2, perhaps the Audi Q3, somewhere in that range. A lot of details are still sketchy on that, but that's probably also going to be Alfa's first full hybrid. Next up, of course, we have the Hummer EV, which is absolutely ridiculous, but I'm still really interested in driving it. Mazda is supposed to be releasing an all-new family of rear-wheel drive vehicles coming in 2022, likely starting with the Mazda 6 sedan, although, again, details are still a little bit sketchy here. We aren't sure exactly what Mazda is planning as far as the revitalization of their lineup, but it looks like Mazda is trying to position themselves as the next Buick or the next Acura, if you will, that premium brand that sits somewhere between luxury and mainstream. And I think that the addition of rear-wheel drive platforms and their new inline-six engines, it's really going to take them there. What has surprised me is that Mazda does not appear to be replacing all of their products with rear-wheel drive platforms. So it looks like some of the platforms will still be front-wheel drive, but the more expensive, more luxurious variants will be rear-wheel drive. Sometime in 2022, Volvo's next generation XC90 is going to be debuting. This is going to be built in their factory right here in the United States of America. And we should also be seeing sometime thereafter at least renderings of the next in Volvo's lineup. Most likely the S90 and XC90 are going to be next to be replaced, and then the XC60. This is going to be the next generation of Volvo's platforms designed for full electrification. So I wouldn't be surprised if we saw a full EV XC90 announced when the new model comes out. Speaking of EVs, we have the Kia EV6. This is basically the Kia version of the Hyundai Ioniq 5, although it is styled a little bit more like a Kia Stinger, and it gives us more power in the top-end trim. There's going to be an over 500 horsepower version of that Kia, and there's also going to be a longer range version, slightly longer range than we find in the Ioniq 5, likely due to the aerodynamics. Mercedes is going to have a brand new C-Class in 2022. There's going to be a fleet of BMW electric vehicles, starting with the BMW i4, also in the United States. The Genesis electric vehicles are coming, G80 and GV60, and of course the Cadillac Lyriq as well. Now let's talk about the vehicles that disappointed me a little bit in 2021. The first one is the Mazda MX-30. I understand where Mazda was going with this vehicle. There's definitely a rational reason that people should take a look at a short-range EV or a range-extending EV whenever that particular model comes out. But I think that Mazda could have done a better job with the MX-30 size-wise. It is a little bit on the small side. They also, I think, could have done a bit better with the range. Maybe 150 miles, 160 miles would definitely have been better than what they ended up giving the model. Again, I completely understand the rationale behind what they did. I just don't think that the market is quite there for the MX-30, and it doesn't appear that Mazda really believes that there's a huge market for it either, since they aren't going to be building too many, and at the moment it's going to be California only. Now, on the other hand, I am really interested to see what the MX-30 range extender is like once we finally get it. I really hope that Mazda gets it together for that model. Next, we have the Toyota Mirai. This is a really hard one for me because the Mirai is pretty and it handles well, but I just think it's absolutely the wrong landing for a hydrogen car, and I love hydrogen cars. I have a Hyundai Nexo at the moment. For me, at least, it would have made a lot more sense if Toyota had put the hydrogen fuel cell stack into a Highlander or even a RAV4 or something like the new Tundra. I think that would have made an awful lot more sense. In the Mirai specifically, the hydrogen fuel cell just doesn't make a whole lot of sense for me. The trunk is really tiny, the back seats are compromised because of the location of the hydrogen tank, and even though it's the best driving and the fastest hydrogen car available in the world right now, I think they just could have taken that to the next level. So as a result, I think it's a great landing, but it's the wrong airport for me. Similarly, we have the Infiniti QX55. I really struggled with this model. I kind of understand that it's trying to be the 21st century sedan, if you will. It has a very sedan profile, but it's lifted up because people want that higher hip point, the higher seating position, the more commanding view of the road. They want all-wheel drive, they want the ground clearance, etc. But as it is, I just don't see much of a reason to buy the QX55 over the QX50. It's a styling adventure, and I'm just not sure how that's going to go. Although I won't be driving this until 2022, I am a little bit concerned about the Nissan Z because I just think that Nissan could have done a little bit more with this model. They could have given it a little bit more power than the same engine in the Infiniti lineup. They could have tweaked it a little bit more. I think that the look is really good and I like the interior, but there are still some components borrowed out of the previous generation Z, which did surprise me, and I just think that they could have pushed the envelope just a little bit further. Now, we should all be thankful that the Z exists at all because companies like Toyota had to pair up with Subaru or BMW to create their sports vehicles, and there really isn't much out there like the Nissan Z, especially in this price range. So we should be thankful that it exists, but that doesn't stop me from wishing that Nissan just pushed things a little bit further. And my last vehicle that I want to talk about are the Chevy Bolt and the Chevy Bolt EUV. To be honest, I want to like the Bolt and the Bolt EUV more than I actually do. They're excellent vehicles for someone that is interested in an inexpensive medium-range EV. If you need 200 to 250 miles in your EV, that's a very pragmatic option that's not going to cost you too much. The problem is that there are better options out there that don't cost that much more. The Bolt and the Bolt EUV are fairly small. They're not overly attractive to my eye. They have solved some of the comfort issues, but they're still not the most luxurious, most comfortable vehicle as far as EVs go. For a variety of reasons, the Bolt and the Bolt EV have not received any of the other EV upgrades that we're going to be seeing in General Motors EVs of the future. They charge terribly slowly compared to the Mustang Mach-E, especially compared to the Ioniq 5. The Ioniq 5 DC fast charges at about 90%, 95% charge, as fast as the Bolt will ever go. The battery pack design in the Bolt is the reason for that. And of course, the battery pack design in the Bolt is the reason that it is currently not sold in the United States. It's actually been paused for sale for a moment as they're working out details with battery pack replacements. That was not GM's fault directly. It was the manufacturer of the pack. Apparently there was an assembly problem with the pack. Either way, there have been a lot of problems with the Bolt. I also think this was a fine landing, absolutely the wrong airport. And we can really tell that by the success of the Mustang Mach-E, because initially the Mach-E was supposed to be a vehicle like the Chevy Bolt. Only at some point in time, some higher up in Ford realized, hang on a minute, this kind of EV doesn't really seem to be selling. If we want to really plug the EV thing, we need to go where the EV shopper is. And the EV shopper has very clearly been looking at a lot of Teslas. So the carbon copy of Tesla with the Ford logo on it seems to be what's selling right now. And that's why I'm going to be really interested to see what the EV6 ends up being like, because it also has a very similar look, definitely a little bit unlike the Ioniq 5. Well, everybody, thanks for watching. I hope all of you have an excellent 2022. Be sure to hit that subscribe button if you haven't already done so. Check out all the related videos. There should be a whole list of them down there in the description section with links to all the videos that I have talked about here. You can find me over at facebook.com/AlexNautos to see what I'm doing this week. Of course, there's Instagram, Twitter, all those other social places, and I'll see everybody next week.